Impressive. And on much more regional integration stories, Kenya is poised to ramp up her exports even as the government embarks on a charm offensive to woo her neighbors. KTN's Deputy Economics Affairs Editor Abi Agina had an exclusive interview with East Africa Business Council Chairperson Nick Nesbitt, and now brings us this report. Over to you, sir.
Want to discuss matters regional trade in the light of the growing concern around the dwindling numbers across the various countries in East Africa. We are now joined by the chairman of the East African Business Council, Mr. Nick Nesbitt. Such a pleasure to have you on the program, Mr. Nesbitt.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here, and always good to be with you on one of your shows. Thank you. All
right. Let's dive in. And of course, the recent visit by Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu gave a lot of excitement when it comes to rekindling our trade ties with Tanzania. Our relations have been quite frosty for the last few years. Perhaps as a business community, what are some of the key outcomes that you see will benefit business people moving forward?
So I think, first of all, the number one thing that President Suluhu brought to Kenya was optimism. She brought a freshness. She brought a new style of leadership. I think she shocked Kenyans with her warmth, her generosity, her kindness, and also her firmness. She was also very clear in that her focus will be around building prosperity for her country. And that means she's very open to business. With 60 million plus or minus people in Tanzania and an economy that is growing fast as it is, I think for the business people in Kenya and probably even in the region, but especially for the people in Kenya, what happened over these last few days was it opened our minds to the potential of what could possibly happen in Tanzania now that she has listed the things that she wants to change, which is personnel in some places. She wants to eliminate bureaucracy. She wants to revisit the taxes. She wants to make it easier for businesses to come and operate in Tanzania, and so on. And so that's from her part. And I think the other exciting part that our president, Kenyatta, did was to reach out an olive branch and ask the Tanzanian business people who are in the room, and of course others who are not there, to come and invest in Kenya. And he said we were going to eliminate a lot of the bureaucracy around work permits and business permits and so on. And I think that freshness that we get from a conversation where people, the leaders, are inspired in the moment and having given it good thought to open the doors to trade is just the right thing. I think this is something we've been waiting for many, many years. And so the mood yesterday from business people was extremely optimistic.
All right. Looking at this visit, of course, it comes hot on the heels of a continent that is currently pursuing the free continental trade, that is the AfCTA. A lot of concerns have been raised around the barriers to trade. Perhaps as the business community, what tops the list on areas that you feel are low-hanging fruit? And of course, where does it pinch the most? Where do we need to fix the major issues that continue to harbor trade between the various countries across East Africa?
Well, first of all, East Africa is thought of as perhaps the most economically sound and the most economically cohesive region in Africa. At the same time, we complain just about how little intra-EAC trade there actually is. So that means, well, what about the rest of Africa? What about the rest of Africa? So I think the low-hanging fruit here is for us to just implement the things that have already been decided in East Africa, the things that are holding us back from trade, which are mainly the non-tariff barriers. And the non-tariff barriers are the barriers that don't have a tariff. I mean, these are the gotchas. These are the things that frustrate business people left, right, and center every single day. I've been involved in the East African Community Business Affairs for about 10 years. And I promise you some of the things that we're dealing with today are the same things that we dealt with when I first started. So the low-hanging fruit are to make it easy for people to cross borders, that means trusting standards. So if KEBS in Kenya certifies that a particular product is actually meeting a high standard, we do not need to test that product again in the next country and make it very difficult to cross the border, and vice versa. We've got to make it easier for people to respect their certificates. The president mentioned COVID certificates. If it works in Tanzania, come on, let it come to Kenya, right? And if there's a problem with the machines, we deal with it, but let's not make it so complicated. So I think what all of this boils down to in the low-hanging fruit is leadership. It takes the leaders to say, take down that wall. It takes the leaders to say, we want to cooperate. And we saw a very big sign about that yesterday. We saw the president commanding, directing his ministers to sort out the long lines of trucks that have been kept at the borders, sort out the alleged aflatoxin issues with maize coming from Tanzania. So we need presidential directives like that, and then people can follow. And as long as we have organizations like KEPSA and East African Business Council who can hold people accountable in government, in the legislature, if things are not getting followed, fantastic. The low-hanging fruit as well is a dispute resolution committee. We have so many challenges, we need that. The East African Court of Justice is another place we can go if there are problems. So this is a microcosm for Africa. When you talk about the AfCTA, the challenge there is going to be how are you going to bring Francophone, Anglophone, Portuguese phone, you name it, countries all together onto one common platform. I think that means take the lessons that we have learned from here, which is you do need unifying leadership. You need to have a common objective. You need to have something larger than what we're thinking about in our very territorial selves about what we need. And you just need to go systematically at addressing the non-tariff barriers that are going to occur in the different countries and crossing the borders. They will be there. It is very difficult. After all people are generally tribal, and you want to look after yourself before you think of something else. That's natural. It takes harder work to think of something bigger than just yourself. And that's what we're going to have to do in Africa. And that's what we're going to ask our leaders to do. But I think we've got a very good model in East Africa. We just need to implement it and share it with the rest of the continent. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, but we will get there. But I think the one thing that is really important, that's really going to make the whole agreement work, is getting companies who can become regional, who can become Pan-African. And that means we need to support our Kenyan companies, same in Tanzania, support them to expand. We seem to have this thing, PhD, pull her down, pull him down. If we have a very large company, we say that's not fair, there must be all these bad things with them, and they never grow to be large enough to leave the country and go and expand. We need to have them going there, let them have a big voice, let them go and tell everybody this is what we need to go from Cameroon to that country and so on. And that is going to be very important. So it's a mindset thing, largely a mindset thing.
Right. And taking the conversation forward, Mr. Nesbitt, it would be interesting to hear from you. When you look at the impact of having these tariff barriers to trade, how is it affecting businesses? Are we able to quantify the lost opportunities?
So it's very large. I mentioned yesterday that about 60% of the population in East Africa is between Kenya and Tanzania. About 70% of the GDP are the two countries combined. But less than 1% of the GDPs of our countries is the value of the trade between us. So what does that mean? That means that you've got 110, 120 people between Kenya and Tanzania, but you can only access a fraction of them. So anybody who is manufacturing something in Arusha who wants to export into Kenya will lose the opportunity to get to 50 million people, basically double their size. And to a large degree, we're somewhat comparable in our GDP, somewhat. But it means that people have lost half their business. Most companies I talk to do not even want to cross the border of Namanga because they don't know what they're going to find on the other side. So if your companies cannot double in size in terms of getting to customers, that means there are people in Tanzania who will not be distributing Kenyan-made tires or candy or food or clothing. That means those people are going to lose out. That means those people are going to lose jobs on the distribution side. Likewise, if we're talking about supply, if a Tanzanian manufacturer does not have Kenyan suppliers, the Kenyans are losing jobs. So no matter what way you look at it, we are losing out by being too territorial and thinking, our country first, and we're not able to get the right people for the job, get the right supplies and economies of scale in our purchasing, and we're not able to get the distribution that we need and access to customers by holding this. So I would say 30 to 40% of everybody's business, the lost opportunity is probably in that range, 20, 30, 40%. People could expand by that much if they had easy access to cross the borders. And as long as we have a common external tariff, which means for any goods that are imported as raw materials, semi-finished or finished, there's a certain tariff. And as long as that's the same all over, we will then know that every product that's come into the country, any country, is legal. Any product that's added value, that has value added to it, can be sold at a particular price, and we know the inputs are legal. If that's the case, then why do we need to have such long queues at the border? And if you have a one-stop border point and you trust what everybody has done in terms of importation and manufacturing, why don't we have a zero-stop border point, a no-stop border point, so that people are actually paying taxes wherever they are, manufacturing or where they're distributing, and you don't need to stop at the borders. That's my vision. That's what I want to see. I want to see a borderless East Africa that's all digitally tracked, use blockchain, use RFID, use technology that I promise you that if it works in Sweden or Chicago, it will work in Kenya, plug it in, it will work. Let's move. Let's get out of this analog, karatasi, full-scale apps that don't necessarily work, and let's look at the bigger picture. And I think that's where we need to go.
All right. And very pertinent points you're raising there. I'd like to also just have you weigh in on the fact that President Uhuru Kenyatta did announce that Tanzanians won't require work permits to work in Kenya. It sort of speaks to what you just alluded to when it comes to borderless East Africa. On the flip side, we didn't hear much from the Tanzanian president.
Yes. No, it's, the president, our president, is in a fortunate position because he knows that there are many Kenyans who have invested in Tanzania. We've come from different economic, perhaps political, perhaps social backgrounds, right? But that's in the past. And the result is what the result is today. There are more Kenyans investing in Tanzania than there are Tanzanians investing in Kenya. So it's let me say, pretty straightforward for the president to be able to say Tanzanians come to Kenya because he knows in the back of his mind that there aren't very many of them here. And he can be gracious to invite them to come here. On the other hand, there's still a lot of sensitivity. We know the cultural sensitivities that Tanzanians have towards Kenya. It's going to take some time. President Sulu's only been in that role for about a month, 6 weeks. There are some people who are very wedded to the past. They can't quite see the future. They can't imagine it. And if she announced that the Kenyans are coming and they're going to flood in, I don't think that would be the right thing for her to do politically. But she said the right things as diplomatically as she can, that they're going to open up their economy and they want investors to come in and so on. It's tough investing in Tanzania. It's tough investing in Kenya. But if you push the envelope hard enough and enough people come, eventually enough ministers, enough people in ministries and departments will feel the pressure. She will have enough people coming to her to say, I try to invest in segment A, B, C, D of your economy. This is what I saw. She'll get frustrated and things will change. But I think it would have been a little premature of her and to have said and reciprocated without all the due consultation that she needed back at home. But nevertheless, I think she has charted the course and the future of Tanzania in these last few days, at least in Kenya's mind.
Speaking to the big picture, Mr. Nesbitt, as the East African Business Council, there have been a lot of concern around the ease of doing business across not just Kenya, Tanzania, but the larger East Africa. As a body that literally represents the business community, what are some of the initiatives that we should anticipate in this dispensation?
Well, I think as we go forward with I lost you a little. Were you saying the East African community, or were you saying the East African Business Council? It broke up a little. Sorry.
EABC.
EABC. So with EABC will continue on the direction that it has been going for the last few years since I've been chairman. I'm in the seat for another year. I've got a very capable board, and we've got a very capable secretariat. And our most recent executive director has just been promoted to become the Secretary General of the East African Community. So Honorable Mathuki has done a wonderful job, a stellar job in building the fortunes of EABC. Along the way, he's been very clear. He and I have worked very closely about what we want to do with regional integration. He got his PhD about 18 months ago from the University of Nairobi in regional integration. So he's a scholar and as well as a politician, being in IALA, and has a very, very keen sense of what private sector needs. So he has not gone far. He has not gone far. He's just gone down the street in Arusha, and we intend to remain extremely close. After all, Article 7 of the East African Community Charter said it's all, eventually private sector led. The whole thing about EAC is supposed to be about private sector and uplifting everybody. So where are we going from here? We're going to address some of the issues I mentioned in the beginning. We're going to address standards. We're going to address the movement of people, that is professionals. We're going to make it easier to fly our products and our goods from one country to another. We're going to make it easier to communicate. That means creating a one region so you don't have to pay such high roaming charges. We also want to make sure that the cross-border fiber optic cable companies, their prices are consistent and they promote business. We want to make sure that there's a dispute resolution committee, and so on and so on and so on. All of this that's going to get done is going to be spearheaded by EABC, because that reflects the requirements, the expectations of our business leaders. And the members of EABC, the companies that show up to engage, are the ones who get their issues heard. And now with the EABC, just the leadership, very close to the leadership of the East African community, it means we will have access to the Legislative Assembly. We'll have access to the decision makers and the regulators. And we can begin under Dr. Mathuki's leadership to begin to change the narrative within the East African community. And the narrative, what we need and what we fully expect to start to get, is one that is focused on business. It's not focused on regulation and starting off with the assumption that everybody is, a mischievous business person who's a crook. You start off with the assumption that everybody is good and they're just trying to make an honest dollar or shilling. And let's focus on the exception as opposed to focusing on the rule. So we want to change the sentiment towards business. We want to attract local capital from one country to the next. We want to attract African capital. We want to attract international capital. We want to build regional supply chains. If you build electric cars in Tanzania, why can't we get the tires made in Kenya? Why can't we get the seats made in Uganda? Why can't we get perhaps, the leather of the steering wheel from Rwanda or Ethiopia? And so that way we can do what Europe did, and we have an East African car. And that way the tariffs don't have to be so high if you're assembling it locally. It doesn't become this is a Kenya Thika vehicle. This is an East African vehicle. And so across the board in agro-processing, in manufacturing, in tourism, I want to ensure that we have East African businesses. And that way, as I said earlier, it ensures that every business has access to large amounts of supply, which means your costs will be lower. You have access to the best people from anywhere in the region, and you have a much bigger market. What's You know, what else do you want? That's what you want. So we want to be able to go after the full extent of the market. And I now as chairman, and Peter in EAC, Aiden Mohammed in charge of the Council of Ministers, and His Excellency the President is the chairman of the chairman of the presidents. You've got a full lineup. We've got 10 more months to go, and we've got to get busy, and we've got to make all of these changes happen very quickly. And so we will not give up until we are done and my term ends.
All right. Thank you for that extensive discussion around regional trade. We've been speaking there to Mr. Nick Nesbitt, who is the chairman of the East African Business Council, giving us some insights around what it will take to bring back the volumes of trade back to where it was.
Thank you so much,